Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on Safe Roads for All. You're very welcome to join us as part of National Road Safety Week and also as part of Road Safety GB's Festival of Road Safety. So hopefully we can see that the lobby has emptied and most people are now starting to get into the main meeting. So thank you very much for choosing to spend your Monday lunchtime with us. Hopefully the next hour or so will be suitably interesting and informative and will help you to connect with some of the themes that come out in the Safe Roads for All report, which was launched at the end of August this year. I'm delighted to say that we've got a superb panel for you today, which includes several of the report's authors, and my job really over the next hour or so is just to help us get through the conversation and to facilitate that, to help draw out some of the key themes that emerge from that report. So if you have not been on at least one of the webinars that I'm hosting over the last couple of weeks, let me just do a little bit of housekeeping before we launch into the main thrust of our topic for today. So we want you to be able to participate with this. This is not just a kind of conversation amongst experts that we're asking you to sort of look in on. This is not an opportunity just for sort of intellectual voyeurism or something. We would love you to take part. So please do use the chat function to raise your thoughts, make your contributions. It would be really helpful to me if you've got a specific question that you would like to ask of the panel, if you could just write in capitals question at the start, and then that will help me as I scan through any comments that are coming through to pick out the ones that you're really asking me to put to the panel. We will be recording today's session so that recording will then be available. It'll be available through the Road Safety GB website and also through the Agilysis website as well. And we'll also, well, I said that the slides will be available. Actually, there's very little in the way of slide presentation for today because it's really about the kind of conversation that we want to have. But that will be available afterwards as well. So for anyone who's not familiar, Safe Roads for All is a report that came out at the end of August. Really want to say a big thank you to Mary Williams from Break for taking a lead in bringing people together to help collate that report as part of trying to inform the DFT's ongoing development of a new road safety strategy and trying to bring together perspectives from across the road safety family, as it were, in order to highlight what ought to be the focus and emphases in a new strategy. And so Mary brought a group of us together, as I say, a number of whom are on the call, and we'll do introductions in just a second, to provide some perspectives that ended up being in the form of the Safe Roads for All report. When that was launched, then there was an invitation sent out to road safety organisations and other partners to join in and to form effectively an alliance calling on government to move forward in this direction. I'm delighted to say that there were many organisations, and I can see from those who've joined us today, some of you on the call are representatives of these organisations who have put their weight behind it to call on government to move ahead with a strategy that draws on these themes. So we're very grateful for the report for the support of all of those organisations. But if you're part of an organisation that would also like to lend your weight to what's called for within Safe Roads for All, then it would be great to hear from you as well via the Safe Roads for All website. Right, it looks now like most people have managed to get into the call, so I'm going to stop presenting slides and I'm going to introduce our presenters. Well, actually, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So let's go around the room, and I'm just doing it in the order that you appear on my screen. So Jean, do you want to just say a little bit about yourself and why you're here?
Oh, thanks, Ian. Hello everybody, nice to be here. I'm very pleased to have been invited to have been an author of the Safe Roads for All report. I work nationally and internationally. I've been working in road safety for about 40 years and I was PACT's first executive director, and I'm on the board of PACTS as a trustee. Very interested in all the issues raised by our report, particularly safe system towards zero.
Great. Sarah.
Hi, so I'm Sarah Simpson. I'm a transport planner at Royal Haskellonian DHV, and I'm really coming at the question of road safety through a couple of lenses. One in relation to motorways, the other at the opposite end of the spectrum through the lens of active travel, and then also and quite specifically around equity, social equity. So three quite sort of distinct areas of work from me in terms of authoring the report. Thanks, Dan. Great,
thanks, Sarah. Suzy.
Hello, I'm Suzy Charman. I'm the Executive Director of the Road Safety Foundation. You might know us from our annual crash risk mapping work that we publish, looking at the performance of Great Britain's motorways and A-roads. We also are advocates of the IRAP approach, which is a proactive methodology for assessing roads, and we're particularly interested in the safety case for investment in safer roads. So that's we've brought to the report hopefully, and also looking at the safety case for more active travel facilities to encourage more walking and cycling.
Great, and last but by no means least, Nick.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for inviting me to participate today, Dan. And it was, yeah, a real honour to be invited to contribute to the Safe Roads for All report, and I'm really pleased at how that came together. There were so many diverse perspectives, all kind of aligned neatly into that report. My background, psychology. I studied, researched driver behaviour for many years at TRL, looking at the effects of alcohol, drugs, mobile phone use, distraction, road design on safety topics. Then thinking about how technologies can support safer driving and getting into the impact of connected and automated vehicles on road safety. Had a couple of years at Bosch as head of mobility R&D. So again, thinking about how their automotive technologies can support road safety. And for the last couple of years, I've been working through my company, Reed Mobility, as an independent, thinking about, again, the potential impacts of connected and automated vehicles on road safety. And in that guise, I'm a trustee of Brake and Road Safe, and for each organisation, I lead a technology working group. So yeah, thinking about the potential that technology can have to support improved road safety.
Great, excellent, thanks guys, and really appreciate you spending the time to be with us here today to discuss this. So I mean, let's just start with a very general question, which is, you know, why do you think the Safe Roads for All report is relevant now as we look at the UK road safety context? You know, what is it that that report really contributes in this moment that we find ourselves in?
Shall I make a start, Dan?
Yeah,
I think for me, we've had this period, and I guess many on the call will be aware that this kind of stagnation in the casualty figures for the last 10 years, which kind of, you know, ironically almost coincided with the decade of action in road safety from the UN. But at the same time, vehicle miles travelled increased throughout that time. So I suppose you could argue that risk has decreased. However, we also know that when vehicle miles travelled decreased during COVID, and some of the analyses that you did with Agilysis, Dan, you saw kind of risk actually increased as people took the opportunity to misuse the lower traffic that they were experiencing out on the roads. So for me, I think it just brought together everyone's sense that we need to be able to do more, and you know, that we understand the challenges well, and with concerted action, we can make a real difference. And the Safe Roads for All is setting out how that difference might be made, and the knowledge that we have and how that can be applied to reduce risk on the roads.
Great, thanks, Nick. Suzy.
So I just echo what Nick said really about the level of stagnation in terms of road deaths and serious injuries that we've experienced over the last 10 years, and the fact that we recognise that we need to do something a little bit different. Also, with the backdrop of renewed focus on environment and so on, we need to be able to change the way that we use our roads for the future. And I think we saw some really good instances of that during the height of the pandemic, where more people were walking, there were quieter roads so we could take children out on bikes and so on. It's great for their health, great for their mental health, and better for the environment if we can make some of that modal change more permanent potentially. But there's a real challenge in doing so, because we need to make sure that we can support that change in mode in a real safe way, so that we don't end up with increased numbers of people being killed or seriously injured on our roads. We also have a better evidence base, I think, than we've ever had before in terms of our understanding of where crashes are happening and so on and so forth, and where the investment might be best placed for different safer road infrastructure, for example, from our perspective. So I think we're in a really good, strong position to work out how we can really get to changing that tangent on the graph, getting it going towards zero at a more rapid pace. Well, any better than stagnation would be good, but to see how we can tip those numbers downward. And I think, yeah, we're in a really good, strong position to make a point about how we achieve that.
Great. Sarah, did you want to come in as well?
So it's I guess I'm very mindful of the fact that my perspective is coming at things from a somewhat different perspective, and I'm really been struck, I suppose, over the last 2 years in particular, although there's this strategic context around data and stagnation, as Nick and Suzy have talked about. In our work, in my team's work across the UK, I've become increasingly aware of almost a two-tier kind of approach to this kind of forming, whereby some authorities have actively adopted safe system road design, planning, maintenance, and others haven't. And some have adopted it, but have acknowledged to me, you know, perhaps away from the public eye, that they don't necessarily know what that means in practical terms, don't know how to implement it and how to move away from more of a traditional approach to road safety. And so I think we've seen how that has manifested in things like Manual for Streets being rolled out partially or not, and still, you know, some sort of, what is it now, like 15 years almost after the event that was published, it's still not being rolled out consistently across local authorities. And I can sort of see road safety going the same way. And the only other thing I would add to that is that I was really drawn to the overarching message of this report, because in our world within transport planning, particularly on the private sector side of things, road safety is seen almost consistently. Clearly there are patches where this isn't the case, but almost constantly road safety is seen as something additional and ancillary to the business of designing, maintaining, planning roads and infrastructure. And in discussions around COP26, around climate change and everything, really, pandemic, public health, I've consistently again been struck by the fact that we can no longer as a sector see it in that way. We have to understand our personal professional responsibilities in addressing road safety as a core element of our design process.
Yeah, great. And Gina, I wonder whether I might come to you, because a couple of weeks ago, the WHO and UN Road Safety Collaboration launched the global plan for the second decade of action. I mean, Nick's already mentioned how, you know, we haven't necessarily fulfilled the ambitions of the first, but I just wondered whether, especially with your international perspective, how you see, you know, sort of what was in Safe Roads for All meshing with the direction that things are moving internationally as well.
Yes, I think that our report is broadly consistent with what is in the global plan. And also the academic expert panel, which advised the global ministerial in Stockholm, which preceded the development of the global plan. I mean, in terms of the need for the scale up of investment, the need for the setting of goals and targets, the need to align with other societal objectives, you know, the other SDGs. So I think that there are important similarities. I suppose at the same time, having worked in international development quite a bit over the last 20 years, you know, there are strengths and there are weaknesses in the global plan. And I don't think that we ought to look at it as a national blueprint, but it certainly picks up a lot of the issues that Nick, Suzy and Sarah have alluded to. And I think really, you know, our report is quite consistent with what is going on internationally, and we're trying to bring out, I suppose, a bit more pointedly than the global report, what best practice we should be following nationally and urgently. I mean, the number of deaths and serious injuries, which are preventable largely, is just the main rationale why we should be acting now. And the new DFT strategy, which is promised, holds an absolute opportunity to get going properly here.
Yeah, I wonder whether we might just sort of touch on that. So I said right at the start, you know, we're hopeful that the context here is of a forthcoming DFT strategy. I noticed within the budget that there were some fairly substantial amounts earmarked for roads in particular. I mean, money for repairing potholes. There was about £5 billion for local roads, as well as I think £2.7 billion for London-style transport systems in the regions. I guess, you know, sort of just, can we read the runes at the moment and be genuinely hopeful that we are going to see a decent investment in road safety over the course of the next few years? How hopeful are you as a panel?
Shall I go first? I'm optimistic. I will always be optimistic that that we will find the money to do this really important work, because ultimately human life is important, and protecting people and their loved ones is important. And not only that, the figures make perfect sense. Why wouldn't you invest in this stuff? Other than the fact that there's not enough money to go around to do everything else. But I will always remain optimistic until I retire. There we go.
Okay, let's hope you're not planning to retire anytime soon, Suzy. That's we need that.
Soon I have young children. I'm going to be going until I'm about 80.
Can I come in? Can I come in there?
Yeah.
I think we have to be optimistic. I think the past decade has revealed that we haven't got much out of road safety in terms of huge investments that have been in our primary road network, for example. And we know that there are funding issues in terms of local authority activity. I mean, I think this area is particularly important in terms of improving our network safety management, because it does provide the framework for everything else, for road users, for vehicle use, etc. So we've got to get that right, and it's so fundamental to a safe system approach, and we've got to get stuck in there. And I just note that some Swedish in-depth research, which looked at the different contributions of different approaches to road safety and different strategies, looked at the relative contributions, and they found that in terms of the prevention of road death, doing things to the protective qualities of roads and ensuring an appropriate road and speed limit hierarchy is, you know, the principal means for reducing death. So incredibly important, and I'll be really disappointed if the road safety strategy doesn't put that up front and central and start to give us some new directions to pursue.
Yeah, great. I think that's something that I would very much like to come back to in a bit. I wondered whether we might just sort of think about the report frames safe and healthy mobility and talks about that as being a priority. And I just wondered whether we might highlight what we see as some distinctions between that view of the world and perhaps sort of classical perspectives on injury reduction, because I think that it's quite a different lens to look at the world through. So I was just wondering whether somebody would like to sort of help frame that for the audience.
Yeah, kind of. It's linked to the previous question for me, Dan. So, I think in terms of reasons to invest in the report, we talk about the 33 billion per year that road crashes cost the UK. So there's a kind of logical reason to invest from that perspective. But I think a cause for optimism, and linked to your second question, is that I think there's greater recognition now of safe and efficient road transport isn't only a transportation problem. It links to health, it links to education, it links to employment, it links to broader prosperity. And of course, as we've talked about already, the decarbonisation agenda. We need to be able to achieve those mobility outcomes whilst also tackling the path to net zero. So yeah, I think there is a recognition that it's a multidisciplinary problem, and it needs to be addressed by thinking cross-sector, cross-culturally, in ways that the Safe Roads for All tries to describe, I think.
Great. So again, sort of right at the heart of the report is the safe system. We've mentioned it a few times already, and I was just interested in your views on how well understood the safe system continues to be. Have we really done the job that we need to on embedding the safe system in terms of professional practice, in terms of implementation, in terms of sort of how ready we are? I think it was 2015 when DFT first talked about adopting the safe system as a way of doing road safety. But yeah, very much interested in your views on how ready we are to fully embrace it and fully implement it. I imagine, Jean, you'll have a particular perspective there.
Yes, well, I'm thinking back actually to the Road Safety Management Capacity Review, which the DFT published in 2018, and indeed subsequent reports on take-up of safe system nationally. And I think that certainly at that time, evidence that safe system isn't generally very well understood by both policymakers and professionals, rather disappointingly, given the fact that this area and field of activity has been talked about internationally, worked on internationally now for many years. I think we've been a bit slow there. And we've been doing bits and pieces which you can call safe system related, but not really seeing the whole picture and not thinking of a safe system approach as an integrated whole picture thing. And for me, I think getting the thinking right, or understanding really what safe system is the most important thing. Getting your head around what it actually is, rather than the various bits and pieces needed to deliver it. But I think that there are pockets of real knowledge. I can see rapidly growing interest in safe system as we start to talk about it more. And I don't think that professionally we've talked about it enough, to be honest. And there seems to be increasing take-up of safe system Vision Zero strategies, or safe system 2 Vision Zero, as I like to call it. Various local authorities, of course, we've got the great work going on at TfL, and also we've got now the DFT's intention to continue with the safe system approach for the new strategy. But they really have got to do a lot now to give very practical support, to elevate it, to promote it, and to support the delivery. And I hope that the early years of the strategy are going to be focusing on that. Really, how do we get to a takeoff position all over the UK on this, or certainly GB? How are we going to do that and really start delivering on safe system? I mean, I think there's a lot of interest and a lot of enthusiasm, but still, you know, unless we have got the guidance material, the training material, the investment fund mechanisms, all those things are absolutely necessary. And we're going to be talking about safety performance framework, I think, in a bit, and probably that would be my number one area where everything starts to come together.
Suzy, yeah.
Sorry. So I think absolutely, as Jean says, there's a huge enthusiasm and appetite for safe system. The thing that slightly concerns me is the reality of delivering safe system and whether we are really prepared to make the choices that we need to make in order to deliver safe system. So at its very core, safe system is all about protecting human life and making sure that the sorts of crashes that can happen in a given location do not end up being fatal or indeed serious, preferably, but largely fatal. Now, if you look at survivability in crashes and different types of crashes, we know that beyond 20 miles per hour, if a pedestrian or a cyclist is struck, then the likelihood that they're going to be killed goes up really sharply. So you ought to be, if you're designing a safe system, you ought to be making sure that no pedestrian or cyclist can come in the path of a moving vehicle that's going above 20. So that means that we need segregated facilities for walking and cycling away from moving traffic if we can't reduce speeds down to 20 miles per hour. Equally, in terms of head-on impact, we know that that same propensity to be fatally injured goes shooting up through the roof beyond about 45 miles per hour. Translate that into our single carriageway roads, where we have vehicles moving in opposing directions at potentially 60 at the national speed limit. You can see here that we've got a fundamental disconnect between what we have and safe system, because if you have a head-on crash above 45, there's a very, very good chance that you're going to be killed. So are we ready to either reduce speeds or put in a wire rope barrier or a crash barrier or whatever we can do to separate traffic? Are we willing to do that on our single carriageway network? Ultimately, if we want safe system, we have to take quite difficult decisions. We can move things along the way, we can put in central hatching, give them a bit more space between one another and so on, and take baby steps, but ultimately safe systems means that we do not allow crash forces that will overcome the human body to be a possibility. And that has got implications. And so, I worry that we're committed enough to take those decisions. It can mean cutting down trees, you know, replanting trees elsewhere so they're not by the carriageway. But that's a really difficult thing for local authorities to achieve.
Yeah.
I would just chip in here because this to me gets to the heart of the issues in relation to delivering this on local road networks. And a few things really spring to mind. I'm really massively generalising now. Just to be very clear, this is not my sort of consistent view, but I'm sort of generalising for effect. So in our team's work, we find local highway authorities, particularly making decisions on development management, are risk averse in that they want to reduce uncertainty. So politically, there is no appetite in most local highway authorities, in my experience. You can see the layers of caveats here, to actually take a risk, particularly on development management issues. And that means that we find a propensity for just keeping on with the prescribed approaches. Again, we've seen this with Manual for Streets, which stripped out so much of the prescriptions on as they related to street hierarchy, and yet we still have local highway authorities sticking to old DB32 street cross sections and street hierarchies. So challenging even that since 2007 has been mired with difficulty, and I think getting to a place whereby street hierarchies, particularly at 30 miles an hour plus, can be so materially changed is going to be really challenging. One of the challenges from a developer's point of view as well, because obviously so much of these roads are either built or improved or, you know, modified through development, will come down to the V word, so viability. It's not going to be a question of, in all cases, you know, planting trees, although the National Design Code has something to say on that as well. But actually how we professionally resolve and reconcile questions of commercial viability and having wider street sections to actually enable some of this to happen, reducing down plot sizes, I think that is going to be a challenge. And I can sort of see that a lot of this is going to rest on planning decisions through the planning inspectorate. But either way, we are not, as a sector, talking about safe system, not nearly enough. Not nearly enough.
Great, thanks all. So I mean, I think this interestingly sort of brings us to a question around leadership, which is where I wanted to go next. I noticed Alan Tapp's on the call, so welcome Alan, great to have you with us. He questions our optimism panel and says faith is belief without evidence, and there is scant evidence the current administration is interested in road safety. I wonder whether we can sort of I don't know, give Alan a little bit of an injection of optimism this fine Monday lunchtime. But I wanted to kind of come back to the point around, you know, sort of the leadership that is going to be needed to really take us forward, which I think, you know, you've started to touch on there. We've had a decade without targets, without a performance framework. I mean, is that enough, or what else are we going to really need to see? Because the report does make very clear that leadership is going to be a key to driving change. So I'd be interested in your perspectives on that. Jean, maybe you could start.
Okay, well, I mentioned earlier things that government needs to be doing in terms of assisting us in implementing a safe system approach. I think that there is no more important issue than government establishing a robust national road safety performance framework, which looks like a safe system performance framework. I mean, you see performance frameworks, loads of different KPIs and whatever, but the relevance to a safe system approach and its implementation aren't necessarily there. And I agree. I mean, I think most of us in the UK would acknowledge that the last decade hasn't been our finest hour in terms of road safety policies, and that they've been largely inadequate, and we haven't had the leadership that I think most of us have desired from government. There's been a big gap. And I think we can only hope that some of the things that ministers have said in recent times are going to take us forward, really. And I think actually it's up to us to keep the pressure on and to create the pressure such that we don't let government off the hook if they come forward with a road safety strategy which we know is not adequate. So yes, I mean, targets, goals and targets, we need, in terms of a road safety performance framework, the long-term towards zero goal, KSI targets to 2030, and then targeting progress with key safety performance indicators which relate to the frequency and well, the prevention and mitigation of death and serious injury. They provide the rationale targets, the glue for the activity of the many agencies working in road safety. And without them, there's loss of focus and cohesion. And I think we have seen that in the last 10 years. And the capacity review, if you haven't had a look at it, really goes into huge detail about what that actually has meant in practice. We were awaiting the long-awaited publication of the Loughborough Targets report, and I'm fully convinced that it's going to provide evidence for, or further evidence for, the value of targets. So yes, I mean, coming down to leadership, what do we mean by it? What do we mean by political will? Yes, setting out the goals that we want to achieve, but also major investment. For me, these two areas are the key elements of political will. In my opinion, that's what political will is. Goals, targets and money, most important things. And as I think Suzy said earlier, attention to the evidence base. There was far too much in the past couple of strategies that wasn't particularly related to the evidence base and not related to what we want to see in terms of reducing death and serious injury. I could speak for a long time on this, and I'll shut up now.
Sure. Somebody else wants to come in.
I mean, I think the optimism I have is when you see some of the strategy documents that come out, things like gear change, things like the future of mobility urban strategy. You know, the statements in there are things you wouldn't have seen 5 years ago for sure. But you know, unless that's backed up by genuine action, you know, strategies, your talk is cheap, right? So it does need to be backed up. And there are other topics where urgent action is needed as well, right? So I'm thinking particularly about the you know, COP26 big push for electric vehicles. What does that? How does that change the fuel fuel duties, the vehicle duties that government receives? Does that lead us towards you know, road user charging, a subject that's been politically challenging for many years? And if that were the case, does that lead us to, you know, a more major rethink about how and why and who uses the roads and when and where, and you know, all those questions that we could build into thinking about how safety is part of that journey towards a more efficient use of the network, and build in some of that safe system thinking as part of a more modern way of using our transport infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, one of the things that was most striking about the global plan for the Decade of Action was the fact that they had elevated multimodal transport and land use planning as being one of the key lenses through which to see this next decade of action, and moving away from very, you know, sort of car dependent, internal combustion engine dependent mobility, and to a much more rounded view of the way in which we need to see accessible transport that is equitable and serves the needs of all. So yeah, I mean, I think Sarah, you've already sort of touched on it a bit, but I mean, it seems that that is a much more ambitious way of thinking about our transport system, to embrace that and say, well, actually, you know, we just need to come at it with very different priorities to the ones that we've used for, you know, most of the last century.
Just that.
Just that.
And the thing is,
to be a voice of dissent, because I don't know, Alan, if this gives you any comfort, but I'm not feeling overly optimistic on this. I mean, I am by nature an optimistic person, so I sort of can't help myself, but I do feel to a certain extent that we're just sort of shouting into a void for probably 83% of the time. But I've taken some time off work recently, and I found myself reading a couple of books. So Feminist City by Leslie Kern, which, if you can get over her very sort of heavily kind of qualified language does make for an interesting read. And in that one, and also, sorry, Green Metropolis by David Owen, I've had a reread of that because it's been a few years since I read that. And actually, Leslie Kern's book did give me a little bit of a pause for, or a little bit of rebalancing my optimism, because she reminds in that just how important the highway is to protest. Right now, bear with, because and it strikes me that road safety matters are very often changed through campaigns. So very little in this world, as we know, sort of shifts without protest or campaigning. I mean, at the most extreme example, we're seeing obviously the sort of Insulate Britain kind of examples now. Love them or loathe them. I mean, they're very active, and that's having repercussions. We're all aware of campaigns which pertain to safety, some of which are national, many of which are local. And I think I was quite heartened to just be reminded of that fact, you know, that actually there is this intrinsic connection between our highway, because it is public realm. It is where we can bring these sort of protests. And I think just going back to the safe and healthy mobility, actually women's safety, trans people's safety, disabled people's safety, and the perception, all of that is again intrinsic to our being able to get out, walk at any time of the day or night, cycle at any time of the day or night, you know, that you really can't disentangle the two. And on the land use sort of point, Green Metropolis is a really interesting read. It's very American, but I think it also does speak to our kind of inclination to think that sustainable design and sustainable land use means a very kind of a passive house surrounded by green, and actually it doesn't. It means modern, high density, urbanized living where you don't have to have a car. You don't have to have a car. Everything you need is local, within your reach. You know, your 15-minute, 20-minute cities is a very helpful way of looking at this for a reason, because it all, you know, is sort of intrinsically more sustainable in that way. So I think, you know, there's I just mentioned those two books because they both are coming at this from a very particular standpoint, and they're very different to the mainstream standpoint. And I think that serves to demonstrate just how big a shift in thinking we're going to have to actually achieve if we're going to get this to where we want it to be. Hence not being overwhelmingly optimistic. Dan,
Can I just
tried.
Can I just say that I think that I mean, some countries are showing us what's possible here, and just thinking about the highway, I mean, we do need some very specific guidance on planning, on transport planning in terms of safe system, in terms of mainstream operations of network safety management. Where is safe system in highway maintenance, asset management? I mean, the Australians, or the Australasians, I should say, have put together a lovely set of guidance, which we might look at. I mean, some of it clearly based on a lot of the work that we've been doing here and in the rest of Europe, but we are behind here, and I'd like to see the professional organisations really getting stuck in. I mean, CIHT, where are you on safe system? Please arrive. And you know, the other engineering organisations, it's not just governmental leadership we need professional leadership, and we need leadership by the professional organisations, which once were very, very forthcoming in the road safety area. I think I'm going to have my fellowship of CIHT now suspended.
Well, after Sarah's, you know, sort of encouragement to us to get out and protest, I mean, you've risked it all there, Jean. So One area actually that I was encouraged to see is sort of emerging as an area of, sort of potential leadership is the consultation on road collision investigation branch, which is actually one of the things that we said was needed within the Safe Roads for All report. Well, we said that it needed a road collision investigation and safety standards agency, which is a little bit more expansive than that. But I'm just interested in your views. I mean, it does seem like, that 17% of the time where our message is getting through, Sarah, there's a message which is being heard within government. And I was just wondering how encouraged you are that they are now consulting on moving that forward. Suzy, is that?
Yeah, absolutely encouraged. It's been long overdue. Why on earth do we not investigate our serious crashes in the same way that it's done in rail and aviation and so on? It's part of making sure that we take a proactive approach to risk reduction by understanding what's happened and where and finding opportunities to stop it happening in other places as well. I think this is part of the journey that we've been going on here, isn't it? From a reactive sort of tweaking around the edges kind of approach, because that's all we've got the money to do, through to now hopefully speaking more proactively about risk management and understanding the crash dynamics and so on, and informing things like those speed curves that I talked about earlier and the speed and fatality risks. We need to update that work instantly. It's really old. Desperately needed, and through doing detailed crash investigation we can do that, but I would actually say that we need to go a bit further, and it speaks to a bit of what Sarah was talking about earlier. Reactive, proactive, a complete mind change about how our roads are due to perform and what kind of travel they need to support and the function and need for those roads. We need to kind of tear up the map, start again, work out what our functional hierarchy is for our roads, understand what they've got to do, what kind of movement they've got to support, what kind of road users you need to be able to use them to do what kind of activity on. And then we need to design those typologies to be safe, absolutely safe, survivable spaces for people. So not only be safe, but to feel safe so they can change modes, so they can change the way that they use the road space, so that we can all be healthier and have increased active mobility and be safe, whilst also understanding we do need to move people quite fast in vehicles from A to B at times. That's okay, but reserve that for the roads that are designed for that sort of standard and that kind of movement. Look at the tiers beneath the motorway system, I think, is my main message. Motorways are really quite safe and we're doing quite well and we're heading in the right direction. There are some intricacies that we won't go into here because I daren't open that kind of worms. But if you move down the network tiers, things go completely a bit AWOL and a bit messy, and we don't really understand what our roads are trying to do. Little single carriageway roads with lots of cycling, like national cycle routes on little tiny 60-mile-an-hour potentially roads, or how do we get those things mapped out, understood properly, so that we understand what we need to provide and where, and how do we take those hard decisions that say actually we don't need people to move so fast on that kind of road, so we can reduce the speed and we can make it a space that people can enjoy active travel on, and so on and so forth. But those are hard decisions and we need to front up to them in order to deliver safe systems. So when I was talking about earlier, I felt like I was a bit negative. These things are all big challenges with safe system delivery. Actually, no, I'm saying that we need to make those decisions. We need to say how we're going to tackle these really hard things so that we can move forward. Otherwise, we're going to end up tweaking around the edges, doing a little bit here, a little bit there, saving a few lives. Brilliant, wonderful. People that got home at the end of it wouldn't have otherwise. But ultimately, we need to move from that tweaking through to the proactive risk management, through to that really, really big scale, rip up the paper, start again to figure out what our roads are all about, what they need to support. Sorry.
And I think what we also need to do is to look at what other countries who have been seriously implementing safe systems, to see how they've gone about it and what were their priorities initially. And when I look at Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, for example, looking at the road classification against safe system principles was the first thing that they did, fundamental thing to do. So it'd be lovely to see that in the new road safety strategy, a commitment to a review of the road classification against safe system principles. But I think we can be optimistic because other countries are doing it.
Okay, so I'm going to have a right of reply here. I know I didn't ask the question, but when I did my master's, June, in 2004, I did a module looking at, I mean, it was one of my compulsory modules in my transport planning and engineering degree, which looked to Sweden, which looked to the Netherlands, and which said basically you have to deal with matters in your transport system on their own terms. And yet here we are. So do you know what I mean? In 2004, we knew that. And here we are in 2021, nearly 2022, and we still haven't learned that. I mean, it's a matter of public record that I am strongly of the view that we need to move away from this over-reliance on aggregated data and get into a more forensic review of crashes. Because I have lost count of the number of times I have seen transport assessments, Pope report, anything, any sort of report almost in the public domain, whereby some sort of fairly superficial assessment is done. These are how many crashes, therefore there's no issue. It's like, well, how many happened at dusk? How many happened because of standing water? You know, let's sift out the killed and seriously injured crashes and look in detail at why those occurred, and then take the lessons from that and embed them into our design. And it's such a basic principle of engineering, which is supposed to be a creative undertaking, and yet we aren't using the most helpful primary source of information. So again, sorry to be a downer, but it just feels like, when are we going to learn this as a sector, that we have this information available? We just need to get better at using it.
Okay,
and just another sorry, Dan, and another tick in the box for the road collision investigation branch would be, a common thread for the families of victims of road crashes is the desire to learn, that no one else suffers the pain that they have. And I think the ability to learn from incidents through that in-depth investigation is really powerful, especially in the context of vehicles that are, capturing so much more data about the way they've been controlled, the way they've been operated, the accelerations, decelerations they experienced. The ability to capture that and analyze it is going to be very informative and instructive into how those incidents can be prevented in future.
I mean, can I just add, though, I think we've got to be really careful that we're not going to go back to square one, scratching our heads and say, well, what are the causes of death and serious injury? We know what they are. We know what the underlying operational conditions are which affect death and serious injury. And these factors are in road safety strategies to 2030 in those countries who are most advanced in implementing safe system. So whether it be targeting compliance with speed limits, whether it be targeting progress with IRAP safety ratings, or targeting progress with Euro NCAP safety ratings, improving emergency medical response. We don't need to start from square one in this collision investigation organisation to say, well, what do we need to understand to do anything? So I think we've got to be really careful there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think actually we're talking across purposes, or there's actually much of an argument here. I think we're looking for the both and, not the either or. We're not looking for a road collision investigation branch to help us to understand the things that we've been missing. We're saying there's a whole bunch of stuff that we jolly well do understand, and we need to get serious about implementing that. And then in addition, doing detailed analysis will enable us to not only do those things that are fundamental to the operation of the system, they'll enable us to deliver very, very much more for the safety of our citizens, which I think is something we definitely need to be pursuing. I want to just move us on to, because I'm very conscious of time. And one of the things that we said in the report was that we wanted to encourage Britain to be a world leader in the safety and environmental regulation and standards of the UK vehicle fleet. Now, our science and engineering in the UK is strong. We've actually been leading the world in development of some, sensor technology and some of the safety systems that are on vehicles. But again, there's another piece to this, isn't there, that actually it's about embedding that to really get the benefit that emerges from it. So just wonder your views on how much further we still need to go in the vehicle space. Nick, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you see a new mode introduced and people apply that kind of safe system thinking to that mode, you get a very different outcome to the way vehicles are regulated today. So you probably know where I'm headed. So scooters, geo-fenced, power limited, speed limited, parking highly restricted. That kind of read across to other motor vehicles hasn't happened. There is a reluctance for manufacturers to adopt. Why would they? Why would they try adopt those kind of restrictions on what might be considered like personal freedom for individuals? And I think the shift, the move, slow as it is, towards automated vehicles is giving us a greater sense of how do we want vehicles to operate on our roads? How do we want to encounter those vehicles? And I think much like I think Suzy was describing earlier, the kind of speeds they should be adopting, the kind of infrastructure they should be using. I think that is a route into having that conversation and applying that kind of best practice thinking to achieve those better safety outcomes. That's my optimistic hope.
I mean, can I come in here, Dan? I think
please.
that it's clear that from research, not just in this country but elsewhere, that when it comes to preventing and mitigating serious injury, in particular, then vehicle safety is the most effective means of preventing and reducing it, and indeed the most efficient road safety strategy. I mean, it's led to huge improvements in UK road safety over the decades, and now has the potential to help us further very, very substantially if we adopt the last general safety regulation package of measures being adopted across Europe from July 2022. A decision has been taken recently that we're not just going to adopt that package, and PACS is working in collaboration with other organisations, including TRL, to put a document together to highlight just the importance of us going there. So yeah, vehicle safety, fantastically important. We've got a great opportunity in terms now of coming up with a new national type approval system, which is giving some elevation to environmental standards, but from looking at the consultation documents so far is not really elevating safety to the place where it needs to be. So we need lots of responses to this consultation document and lots of support for us to maintain a world-leading role in vehicle safety. Acknowledge that it is going to take us a little time to get to safe, connected and autonomous vehicles, but there is a whole advanced driver assistant technology package that needs to come in that can just help us be safer, more safe road users. Yeah.
Great. Well, look, I said I'm conscious of time, and we're knocking on the door of 1 o'clock, and we know that you've got busy schedules, everyone, so we don't want to eat into too much more of your time. So I'm going to draw us to a close fairly imminently. There's many things that we could have talked about more that are addressed in the report. I would encourage you to go and take a look at it. You can go to the website, which is saferoadsforall.co.uk. Sorry, no, it's not. It's saferoadsforall.org. Get the correct address. That's very helpful, isn't it? Saferoadsforall.org. And there you can download the report, read it in detail. It's not long, but it will put a little bit more flesh on the bones of some of the things that we've talked about. I hope actually what you've seen in our conversation today is the level of passion and consideration and sort of thought that has gone into that report. It came about as a process of, you know, some of these people in this conversation and others contributing and shaping what ended up in that final report. And I think it's therefore, you know, I commend it to you. Go and take a look at it, and please do consider, if you have not already done so, joining the Alliance. It doesn't mean that you have to sort of do anything, or you don't have to kind of pay to be a member. It's about saying that you share these same values for a transport system that works in the interests of everyone, that actually seeks to address issues around sustainability and equality and health, as well as being a system that is safe for those who use it. So please do go and take a look there. So as we draw to a close, I just thought it would be good to go around the panel and give you guys an opportunity to maybe say, you know, one last sort of concluding remark, something that you think you're, you know, particularly glad made it into the report, or you think we need to really sort of give more attention to as we move forward. So who'd like to start?
I'll take one.
Thanks, Nick.
It was something I worked on with Dan, the safer mobility virtuous circle. So the idea that the more you invest in something, the more return you will get, and the greater the benefit. So yeah, investing in active transport, active travel, public transport, you get return on that. So yeah, I was keen to see that, and hope that is what is forthcoming.
Great, thanks, Nick. Suzy.
So for me, it was all about the call for funds to be released to the local authorities, because as we know, funding for local authorities is extremely tight, and it's very difficult for them to make the necessary investment in safer road infrastructure. And so from my perspective, absolutely, it's about identifying that investment package, excellent high returns, based on the work that we've done from Safer Roads Fund. So looking at the opportunity there to save hundreds of lives and serious injuries. So for example, England local, we're talking about an investment of 700 or so £million that should prevent around 7,300 fatal and serious injuries over the next 20 years. Benefit cost ratio 4.6. I'd put my money into that if there was an investment opportunity to just stick some cash in. So I'm just really hopeful that's going to be taken forward.
Great, thanks. Sarah.
I think for me, as ever, coming at it from the other end of the spectrum, I think there's a recognition that if we're going to deal with this, it's intensely individualized as well. And actually, a few of us have had call for actions. I know, Dan, you said the call for action for everyone to join the Alliance. Jean, you mentioned, or you threw down the gauntlet thoroughly to CIHT, but actually I think there's a challenge and a call to action for everyone working in the sector, which is to make it our business to get informed, and make it our business so that the teams that we lead and or manage, or projects that we lead, are also informed. And I know everyone who's authored the report, and many other professionals actually working in the sector, would be only too happy to have conversations with other professionals to enable that to happen. Great,
thanks, Sarah. Jean, over to you.
Well, I think I've said more than enough, actually. But I'm going to have to finish with the words of that most eminent US president. Yes, we can.
Very good. Very good. Excellent. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much to our panelists, to Sarah, to Nick, to Jean, and to Suzy. Thank you for taking the time for this conversation. To everyone who's joined us online, really appreciate you carving out the time to listen to us talk, but hopefully it's been of value to you and will at least drive you further into looking at the Safe Roads for All report and engaging with some of these oh so important issues for the roads that we all get to use on a daily basis. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you at another webinar soon. If you happen to be free at 2 o'clock on Thursday, I will be here again launching a new report looking at local authority road safety performance across Great Britain with the Towards Zero Foundation and with PACTS. So please do sign up for that. Just go to agilysis.co.uk facebook.com/webinars, and we hope to see you then. But enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.